I'm Vicki Will. I'm Vice President of Operations Support for Exelon Power. And I want to welcome you here today. This is Women's History Month. Due to scheduling issues, it's moved into April. But before I get started, I want to make a plug. Recently, Serena Wilson Archie resigned or retired. She was the Network of Exelon Women Coordinator for Kennett Square activities. So right now we don't have a coordinator. So we're looking for someone to lead our efforts with respect to the new employee resource group. So if you're interested, maybe talk to Serena and find out what that involves. I am a strong supporter of new activities here, as is Joe Ellen. If you're from the Newbury side, Joe Ellen and Marilyn Cray have all supported it as well. So we're looking for someone to take on that lead. But thank you for coming today. I want to put this into some context. In our planning of new activities and other women leadership events across Exelon generation, we've been focusing on recognizing all the skills and resources and good fortune that we have to work for a company like Exelon, bringing our talents to work, and the immense power we have to make an impact, a significant impact as individuals in the lives of women around the globe. If you remember last year, we had Beat for Life here. We'll be back here during our Earth Day event to teach you how they help women in Uganda become self-sufficient and to care for their children and their families. And I was fortunate through Donna Fabrizio to be introduced to the people who are going to be speaking to you today. And this is truly impressive because for very, I don't want to say little effort, I know it's a lot of effort, but you can make a big difference for very little money. So I hope that you will pay attention and maybe think about how you can use your skills and such to help other people across the world. And I want to thank Donna Fabrizio, who's the environmental specialist at Conowingo and Muddy Run, for introducing them to me, and I'll turn it over to Donna.
Great, thanks, Vicki. So, ladies, we've got an incredible amount of brain power, and I am truly honored that you made the time to come today. This has actually got me all kind of turned on a little bit. So, Carol Cunningham, this is Carol Cunningham. She and I have known each other for over 30 years. I actually started my career under Carol's tutelage, so she was an incredible force then. And as we both went on and lived our lives, we've come back together. And I want you to really spend some time, introduce yourself to Carol as well as to Betsy. Carol has had a lot of really interesting things going on in her life these past couple of years, in addition to raising a wonderful family and a very interesting daughter that I hope we hear about. Carol has put together a really nice group of women's empowerment initiatives that I think we can all take a little bit of learning from and then actually incorporate those into our daily lives. And also, she's going to talk a little bit, and more so, Betsy Teutsch, who is the author of the fabulous book that you have in front of you, 100 Under $100, talking about innovation. And as you all know, here at Exelon, there's a lot of activity, a lot of drive around what kind of innovative ideas can we come up with. Well, guess what? Each one of us are innovators. And so take what Carol and Betsy are going to say to you, and if Vicki has already tasked me, because I report to Vicki, as is Heidi and Karen in the back there, to come up with some creative and innovative ideas specific around how the environmental group functions within our overall organization. And I'm pretty sure as I look out to you guys, I see some heads nodding that you've probably been tasked with coming up with some innovative ideas as well. Use Carol and Betsy as a touchstone, get some creative juices thinking, to come up with some innovative ideas, and it can be anything that you come up with. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Carol and to Betsy and get out of your way.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Vicki, and thank you, Donna, for inviting us here today. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to this group. Betsy and we came together fairly recently because one of the projects that I was working on in West Africa is featured in her book. So we will get to that at some point. But both of us are extremely passionate about empowering women to alleviate poverty. There's a lot of people in this world that really do need a lot of help. And I think as a woman, getting a little bit older, I had a tremendous desire to start giving back a little bit and trying to find a place and a niche where I could do that. And Betsy and I are working together. We're both exactly on the same wavelength with this. What we're going to do today is Betsy is going to talk to you initially about her book. The book is really an incredible collaboration of skills and tools to really empower women. I'm then going to present to you a case study of the work that I've been doing in the Gambia in West Africa, which brings together a lot of these different concepts and has really made a tremendous difference to rural women in Africa. Just a little bit more about myself. I'm actually been working in the corporate world for about 25 years. I have my own business called Cunningham Consulting. And basically what I've been doing is helping organizations, companies, to really put together a global mindset. How do we function in a global world? How do we leverage global talent? And how do we make sure that as we work with a more diverse workforce, people from Japan, from England, from all these different countries, how do we bring people together to assure that they are aligned and that they work successfully without having cross-cultural issues, cross-cultural miscommunication, so that they can really be effective as they possibly can. And a lot of the work that I've done, I have actually been able to use in Africa. So I'll be sharing a little bit more about that with you when I get to my presentation. But at this point, I'm just really honored to have Betsy start out. She has just done such an incredible job pulling all this information together, and I know that she is dying to share it with you. So let's go.
Well, thank you so much. It's really pretty amazing to look out and see you all sitting with a book in front of you. My goal in writing this book was impact. And I think you all sitting here are a huge brain trust of women who are really well educated and have a lot of experience in the workforce and a lot of skills, life skills, and we want to recruit you to be part of this in whatever way works for you, to be able to use those talents and skills and align them with things that you care about the most in the world. The book, I like to think of this book as a cookbook with 100 recipes, and then a lot of the entries have variations. A number of different initiatives working on the same problem, and each entry is really a solution to what some people call a poverty trap, the ways in which people are kept impoverished because they lack access to solutions that we all have readily. And what Carol is a cook. You know, I have all these ideas here that I compiled, but Carol actually, in real place and real time, has executed them, and she's gonna, so it's an interesting contrast. The book, my background is that I'm an artist, and I have been self-employed my adult life. So I'm an entrepreneur, so the entrepreneurial piece of a lot of these initiatives really has appealed to me over the years. And also I think just that it's a very visual book, that it's loaded with photographs. I loved the photo search, which was all done online. I did not go to these places. This was a research phenomenon of the internet. Basically, I became a very passionate environmental advocate, and I focused my energy mostly local on things that I could do in my home, things that I could do in my local community, and eventually I decided it was time to get kind of grow a new career on top of my art career. And I was able to find work with an organization called Green Microfinance, which started in 2008, and that was really bad timing, so that's why I'm not doing that anymore. But I learned about the impact of a solar panel on a household. I knew all about solar. That was not news in 2008. But for us, getting a solar panel on our house means that we have a renewable energy supply as opposed to something that's not renewable, but it doesn't change our lifestyle. It doesn't mean that we now can do things that we never could do before. When you get one solar panel on a house, for a family that there are about 1.7 million households in the world that don't have electricity. So if you get a solar panel, Then they no longer have to buy single-use batteries. They no longer have to have kerosene lamps, which give off all kinds of horrible toxic smoke. They no longer have to use candles for illumination. It has a huge impact. And also, while in the last 6 or 7 years, the cell phone has just totally taken off as a poverty alleviating tool. I'm going to pass some of these things around. Some of you are too young to remember what cell phones like this looked like. This is the Nokia 2500. It's in the book. It's the best-selling cell phone in the world. They sold about 250 million of them. And one of the main features is that it has a flashlight in it. But once people have, I'm just going to pass it around. I've taken this to show teenage groups, and they think it's hilarious. People need electricity to charge their cell phones. That is really driving the whole thing. So I was just wowed by the idea that if you could get people a solar panel, it would actually improve their lives. I did notice, because I was director of communications and always looking for photographs, that there were no women to be seen in the photographs. It was all men shaking hands and selling products and designing products and delivering products. And the women, if you saw them at all, were like in the back, 20 feet back. You might see a picture of a woman hovered over a wood-burning stove inside a house looking pretty pathetic. And the idea was that we were going to fix this for her. And there was something inherently upsetting about that to me. The next thing that I did was work pretty actively in women's empowerment initiatives. And very exciting to see all the different things that women were doing for themselves. But they focus on health, which is in the book, and they focus on education, which is in the book. But I noticed that all that fabulous technology, which is very literally empowering for women, they were very tech averse. Nobody was talking about women getting technology for themselves. And I felt like my role in life was to be integrating these two sectors, because women are not going to be empowered if they don't have any power. If they can't, it's the power of the plug, I like to call it, the empowerment of the plug. So I decided, I went in with a premise when I started the research. I didn't know I was going to do a book. I just wanted to find out what was going on. Where are the women? Because if you want women, you need to create the demand. If women need to demand these things. If there's no demand, people are not motivated to have the supply coming in. So I learned a lot about what we call social entrepreneurship, which is using business as a tool for getting technology and products to people. That's how the cell phone took off. It was not a charity, it was a business. I found wonderful initiatives that women had taken on. I found great images of women doing all kinds of cool things. There's a woman, Eden Full, and she figured out as an adolescent that if you had a simple mechanism to rotate one solar panel over the course of the day from east to west, that it would increase the solarization by 40%. And you can read about her in the book and how that's evolved. I mean, brilliant. How come nobody's talking about this? So after I had collected all my images, actually on a Pinterest board, I looked at these images and I thought, this is such an incredible story. I have to tell the world what these women are doing. So then I had about 50 tools starting out by the time I had collected, and then I thought, well, I can get to 75, and then pretty soon I was at 100. And that's how the book evolved. It tells a bit, before I go through a quick tour, which is what these photos are. The book is organized by sector, not by region. But I highlight where it's the global south. So it's Asia, Africa, which is pretty enormous, and Central America, Latin America, with a couple of initiatives sprinkled in that are in the United States. I was really intrigued by the whole concept of humanitarian technology. This is a kind of a subset of engineering. So there are a lot of programs now that focus on how do we use our technical skills to design things for people that live in the developing world that lack an infrastructure for energy. So if it plugs in, it has to use very, very little energy. also lacking water, sanitation systems, and good health systems. So you have to design things knowing that they have to be affordable. That's the first. They have to be desirable. That's why cell phones were so popular, because people love cell phones. They're so well designed. That's why the iPhone took off. And they need to work. This is the most essential thing. People living on a couple dollars a day do not have discretionary income. If they're investing in something, it needs to work. And a lot of these tools, by the way, pay for themselves if people can get access to them, because they save money or they save time or both. So if you can have an infusion of credit to help people buy the products, then they often can pay themselves. The first principle of humanitarian design is what they call de-engineering. Get rid of all the inessential bells and whistles that make products more expensive and more likely to break. Just get it down to the simplest thing that you need to get the job done. And they also, in India, they call this Jugaad, which is frugal engineering. I just love the concept. Those of you that work on the environmental side, it's very smart to just not waste energy on things you don't need. The second principle is human-centered design. It used to be that they would design these things without consulting with the people that used them, and they were often failures. That's been one of the big failures of aid all these years, is giving people stuff that they don't really want, that doesn't really work and doesn't really solve their problems. So working with the end users, which in many cases are women, is far more effective. Getting them involved in the design process. Another principle is miniaturize the product. Sell it in the smallest possible unit that you can to make it more affordable, which is cell phones are sold in the developing world by, you buy prepaid minutes. You don't have a plan. You buy as many minutes as you can afford. The competition is around making the minutes as cheap as possible. Solar panels, as we'll talk about in a minute, are a perfect example, because you can pay off your first solar panel, then you can be adding a solar panel. And as you have more power, then you can begin to think about more appliances that would be labor-saving devices, like our grandmothers or your great-grandmothers had. And so those are the principles. They need to be, it needs to work, it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be expandable. I'm going to take you on a quick tour. Those of you that have been engaged in development work, international development, know that there are conventional sectors. And I pretty much followed those, but I added two that are more female-centric, because it's a book about women. The first is much more about health than I expected, because there are so many inexpensive innovations that improve health, and health exactly correlates to wealth. If you want to get people out of poverty, they need to be healthy. This is kangaroo care. Anybody ever been exposed to taking care of a baby by wrapping her right in the mother's cleavage? This is a really low-tech way to do baby incubation for low-weight babies, and it's incredibly effective. It's so effective that it's been exported from South America, where it was invented, to neonatal units all over the world, and they also use it with healthy newborns. I have a 5-month-old granddaughter, and when I went to the hospital, she was wrapped in my son's chest. So this is, innovation goes both directions. That over there is a picture of contraception on the left, which is a section that I broke out a section on women's health, because if you're dealing with women's issues, maternal health, contraception, a whole host of issues for girls, sanitary management. Some of you probably have read articles that if you give girls sanitary napkins, they stay in school. That's just showing you the demand. It's about 200 million women in the world that would like family planning and don't have access to it. The third sector is energy. And this is a woman looking at LED light for the first time in Guatemala. And LEDs are a great example of miniaturization, because they can be a task light. This is an example. Some of you probably know this from it's like on your Kindle or something. It takes so little energy that the charging panel is that small. And here is another example of some solar LEDs. I'll pass these around. This is for disaster use. It's very light. It's, it was originally, part of the funding came through Exelon. It was designed by 2 women, so I'm very fond of it. And it has, to be even more efficient, you can have the lower light or the higher light. And it's designed for refugee camps, but they sell it in the United States to consumers who want it for patios and luminaries and stuff. And that offsets their developing world work. This is called No Kero, which stands for no kerosene. And it's a very flexible design. You can't turn it on because it has a block that it won't go on if there's light in the room. It has a sensor. And it's really flexible. You can hang it, you can set it, you can direct it. So these lights cost less than $10 and the prices keep on dropping. And I'm going to tell you about Solar Sister later, and these are some of the products that they sell. The 4th sector is water and sanitation hygiene. And it's a very big section because there's so much we can do with water, and it's such a huge global challenge. I'm sure Exelon needs a lot of water too. This is a woman, Cynthia Koenig. She's a social entrepreneur. This is a business in India where women carry their water with those they called makas. And this, you push it, and it pushes twice the amount of water, and she pushes it along, and it will cost about $20. And it will be a market solution, and they're figuring, I'm going to just pass these around. And one of the fabulous things about it, not only is it less body strain but in half the time, but men don't think of it as a women's task. It turns out that some of the husbands really like pushing this thing because it's a tool. They really like it. The 5th sector is I kind of did it because it's a book about women. I called it Domestic Technology. And in the real world, global development, really it's all about stoves because they're fuel guzzlers and toxic emission. If people cook with wood, it's very high, the emissions are really terrible and also very unhealthy for the cook and her children. So there's been a lot of emphasis on improved cook stoves. There's been very little emphasis on other ways that women could save time doing their household tasks. And I think that's because who does the thinking and who does the designing and who does the marketing? So if women are more involved in these projects, they're going to think of things that they care about. In all the research that I did, I found only one tool to help women do laundry more efficiently, for example. The way women do laundry in the developing world is on a washboard. You know, they lug the water to the laundry or they lug the laundry to the river, and that is how women spend their time. And it's not, you know, women's time is just not valued in most of these places. Carol will talk about that too. Somebody came up with an idea, it's kind of like a big salad spinner, and you sit on it and you pedal it with your feet. So it's gonna be great, but it's not even out yet. And that's one solution that I could find to something that probably 1 billion women spend their time doing. This is the Grameen Greenway stove. And here, I'll start this one this way. This is a commercial product. They sell it. It's about $16, which is affordable even for a bottom of the pyramid family. And I have a sample. And I love the story of why I have the sample. I emailed them. It was designed by a female combustion engineer, by the way. And I emailed them and I said, I'd love to have a demo to bring to talks. Is there one, you know, kicking around the United States somewhere? Because they're based in India. And they said, oh, no problem. And 2 days later, it came FedEx from India because they're a business. They knew that it would be good promotion for them. So you can read all its wonderful selling points there. But this is the biggest selling point. This is a warranty. It comes with a 1-year warranty. So if you want bottom of the pyramid customers, they have to develop confidence that this is a good product. So it has 1 million benefits that they can tell you about themselves there. The 6th sector is farming. About half of the world's farmers are female, and they get the worst land and they get the least access to resources and good seeds and tools and training. And a lot of the reason for that high number, and it will get higher, is that so many men are migrating to cities. They're kind of seasonal migrants, so they leave to get work. They work a while, then they come back to the village, and they basically leave the women there with the children. This is from a school in Zimbabwe, And this is some kind of chard. It looks a little surreal. And the reason that it is, the reason that it's growing so quickly is because it was fertilized with human urine. You can read about it. Human urine is loaded with nitrogen. That's the main ingredient in fertilizer. This is a construction section, which is pretty small, but there's an immense number of really innovative, creative things that people are doing with waste. In the developing world, they don't have recycling, they don't have good garbage pickup. This is a Guatemalan technique that's being spread around the world. You take a plastic bottle, you fill it with all kinds of garbage, candy wrappers and whatever is kicking around, and it becomes a brick, and they build with them. The Peace Corps has used this technique to build a lot of schools in Guatemala, and it can be used creatively for a lot of other building. And it's a brilliant solution, and there's no firing involved, so it's a lower carbon footprint, and I love it. This is information communication technology, which is a pretty enormous field. The cell phones are driving literacy, because if you want to text, you need to know letters. This is a literacy class. So women are far less literate than men, and obviously, I don't have to tell you here, we need to close that gap. And when women have access to schooling, they do beautifully. E-readers are in the book. You can load an e-reader with a whole library for a kid that's never had access to a single book. And they're backlit, and they use very, very little energy. So one charge lasts a long time. So it's going to be very transformative. I have a section of legal tools in the book, because the more I read about women, the more I realized that women aren't just poor because of cultural bias. Women are poor because they're actively discriminated against in the legal systems around the world. Like looking the other way when a girl is married off at 12 or 13, even though the legal age is 18. That's an example. Women not being able to inherit property when their husbands die. That's pretty common in a lot of places in the world. Things that we just take for granted here. So there's human rights and women's rights are the same thing. And there's also so much violence against women around the world. Just for example, women lacking a toilet or a latrine have to go to a public latrine, and it's incredibly dangerous. That's a site of male harassment, which is kind of a euphemism for being raped, because they have to go to the bathroom at night. And one of the things that is really helpful is solar lights. In refugee camps now, they're able to put solar lights up along the way, and the violence has decreased. The organization that I want to focus on today is Solar Sisters. They work in Uganda, Tanzania, and Nigeria. They were founded by a woman in Connecticut, Catherine Lucy, who worked in finance, and she was well aware of how women are marginalized in the energy sector, in the business sector. I'm sure some of you have, especially some of the women here, might have encountered such a thing. And she, in her next career, decided that she wanted to really focus on bringing solar systems and solar products to women particularly. The model of Solar Sister is called a micro-franchise. Not every woman can come up with a great business plan, especially if she's never been out of her village and seen any other businesses. It's called a business in a bag. It sets up the woman with a whole array of solar products. It costs $500 to set up one Solar Sister in business. It's a loan. She pays it back from her profits from selling. And what it does is she uses her female network to explain what solar products are. She also sells cook stoves like this, not this model, but like that. And one of the funniest things that I read about Solar Sister was they've compared the way a male solar sales pitch goes to what a women's solar sales pitch goes. And the men will say how many kilowatts and how big it is, and lots of its technical attributes. And the women will say, oh, you can use it to keep your chickens warm. You can use it so that you have solar lights for your children at night. they can do their homework. And which approach do you think works better with women? Needless to say. They've been very, very successful. They do things that I love. They really create demand for solar. They make women aware of how it's going to change their lives. And women don't have as much buying agency. If the woman starts nagging her husband that this is something they really need to do, and she understands that it's going to save them money, then it's a way to penetrate these households to give them so much economic advantage. And there's health advantage, and there's another huge advantage that I noticed it in a few articles, and the more I noticed it, the more sense it made, and I emphasized it in the book. Women save time when they get rid of kerosene because and smoke fires, because they're sooty, they're incredibly dirty. They get everything dirty, the bottom of the hands, they get the walls dirty, they get their clothing dirty, they're that inefficient laundry, they have to do it all the time. And when you switch to clean energy, we don't see this in our homes because we have gas and electricity, but when you switch to clean energy, your home is cleaner. It isn't just cleaning out all the indoor air pollution that gives people lung cancer. It's like smoking 2 packs a day to be cooking over a fire. It also means that shopkeepers aren't constantly having to clean off all their merchandise. So it's an immensely liberating technology for women. And I think women haven't fully owned the way in which access to energy is going to change their lives so much better. Also, that solar panel keeps right on generating income through solar energy once it's paid off. So they've eliminated their utility bill. And except for the battery that needs changing, it's been a huge step on that ladder up out of extreme poverty. I'm going to turn it over to Carol, who's going to tell us how it really works, not just the theory. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you, Betsy. I mean, this book is amazing. You start flipping through it and you start thinking about all these different ideas. What I want to do is really provide you with a case study, and this is the Gambia Women's Initiative, which was founded in 2006. And just very briefly, a little bit of background. This is the Gambia. It is located in West Africa, completely surrounded by Senegal, a population of about 1.6 million. And basically, it is a country along a river. So it's not a particularly big country, probably about the size of Delaware. And what happened was, back in 2006, my daughter, Catherine, got to go to this hospital that you can see up on the top there, the Suleiman Junction Hospital, in order to help in the hospital for a period of time. And she came back to the United States and she said, you know, this hospital really needs some help. I mean, a lot of people that have been to different places around the world, I mean, she'll come back with that same feeling. And so she said, you know, perhaps we could get some Band-Aids from Johnson & Johnson or some medical equipment. Because while I was in the hospital, the cold train for the vaccines failed because there was no electricity. There were a lot of babies died because there wasn't electricity to keep them warm, or just some of the basic needs that the mother needed. And so my daughter and I started talking, and then Catherine came up with the idea, well, you know, really the problem at the hospital, there isn't any electricity, or enough electricity. Basically, they had a generator that was 30 years old, that constantly broke down, that used huge amounts of fuel. And so she said, let's work on trying to provide solar energy. There's so much sun in the Gambia. Every day there's so much sun. And see if we can provide electricity and water to the hospital. So when she came back, we worked on this. We very quickly got the whole community involved and got people really well organized. We set up an organization called Power Up Gambia. We raised $300,000 in a fairly short amount of time. And the first thing we did was put in solar panels for water, because getting water into the hospital was incredibly important. Also, we didn't know much about the situation, the infrastructure, how organizations worked. So we thought if we just do something really small, we can try out all these different systems. If it works, then we'll put in a larger panel unit. So what we then did was we put in the larger array. These are actually moving panels. So as you said, they get 40% or whatever it is more electricity. We had to put the panels in. We had to put in the batteries, so huge batteries, and the inverters. So this was quite a large project, particularly for the Gambia. That project has been extremely successful, and the reason I'm sort of giving you this background is because I know many of you are involved in the energy business. And actually, this is Google Earth. These are the panels that we put in. And the next phase of the project is to put in all these panels. So the whole idea of a microgrid, power purchasing agreement now with the electrical utility that does have a little transmission line that goes through, and trying to provide energy to build up some entrepreneurial businesses in the community. So, you know, microgrid is really the way to go, in my view, in Africa. And this is all a very exciting initiative. Now, this quote actually is in Betsy's book. Do your little bit of good where you are. Okay, so I was in the Gambia at the time, and I met up with some incredible women. Women that are earning less than $3 a day, women that really, in my opinion, needed a lot of help. And so I met up with many of the women, and we started what is called the Gambian Women's Initiative. The whole purpose of this is to really raise the income of the women in these rural communities to help them to be more self-sustaining, get their children to school, provide food, provide access to education and to medical facilities. And we thought of 3 key values: empowerment, empowering women. This is a real need in these areas. So that was a very important value to us, as was cooperation. The goal was not to just make a couple of women wealthy or give them the opportunity. The goal was actually to raise village-level communities of women and really help them to move up to a level where they would get more income and could better support their families. And then growth. What can we do to help them grow, to help them understand that growth is really important, and earning more money and helping themselves and their families is the future. This is a picture of the types of children in the villages. This is not an environment where people are starving, but it's an environment where they definitely need a bit more nutrition, they need a bit more food, they certainly need health, and they certainly need access to a lot more education. So in 2006, I was very lucky that I met an amazing woman, Aissatou Cisse. She's actually going to be in Kennett Square this weekend. But anyway, I met Aissatou Cisse, real mover and shaker, a woman that really wanted to help her own people. So the two of us got together and we started to think about how can we empower women, but do it in a sustainable way. There's an awful lot of aid projects that just fall by the wayside because they don't appreciate the need to maintain things, or they don't appreciate the need for ongoing training and support. So Aissatou and I, we identified that we needed a leader, which was her on the ground. We wanted to pilot some project villages, so just start small and then we could see if we could grow. We wanted to build an entrepreneurial foundation. I think a lot of women intuitively have an entrepreneurial spirit, a desire to have business, to set things up, to move things forward. How can we set an entrepreneurial foundation? And then how can we help sustain this so that the women in the villages can really benefit? And I was known in the Gambia as the solar woman because of all the solar panels that we had put over there. So it seemed logical that we started out to create an entrepreneurial spirit with them with solar dryers. And these dryers, these solar food dryers, are in Betsy's book. This is how Betsy and I connected initially. Okay, you have a solar food dryer, very easy to maintain, very low cost. you're taking, in the case of the Gambia, a lot of mango. Mango is almost a waste product. There's so many mango trees. You're drying it, you're extending its life, providing additional nutrition, and we were teaching the women through this very simple project of drying mangoes, which then led to coconut, then led to tomatoes. We started drying everything and selling it. They learned about packaging. They learned about a basic business. They learned about what it takes to call somebody on a phone and try and find a little market, not in their village, but in the next village. Fascinating way of, at a very small scale, just teaching women very simple business skills. So this diagram, I'm not going to dwell on it, but we basically got the dryers, we dried the fruit, we did the packaging, we sold it, and then we could continue on to sustain that. And here's just a couple of pictures, very safety conscious. We took knives with blades that retracted. Nobody cut their hands. We took gloves, things that actually made the people, the women, they need that. They need the latest technology. They don't want some old knife. They want the latest stuff. So we took them the latest stuff, made them feel good about what they were doing. And they loved it. They worked collaboratively together, and this was a very successful way to start out. We then realized that what the women really needed in a village, because this was not bringing in much money. I mean, this is only bringing in a very small amount of money. What women really need is the equivalent of a revolving fund. Something in the village that is going to bring in a reasonable amount of money each month that they collaboratively can then get the profit and decide how they can then generate more income. So we spent a lot of time with them, talking, discussing, what does your village need? And this is kind of where my cultural background came into play. We did an amazing exercise, which was the day in the life of a Gambian woman. And they had to draw on a flip chart what their life was like. And what was fascinating, and a really important thing we learned from this, is that they do not have enough time doing the porridge for the kids in the morning, washing the clothes, going out into the fields. One woman does not really have enough time to set up an entire business. But as a collective group of women, 80 women in a village, they do actually have the time to be able to do things. So by doing simple exercises like this with women, we really started to understand what their needs were. We were listening to them, they were listening to us, and we could start to really come up with ideas that helped. And actually, by the way, just for fun, we did the day in the life of an American woman next to the Gambian woman. And the Gambians were totally amazed that we would get in our car, we would drive to a gym, we would walk on a treadmill for 2 kilometers, we'd get back in our car and drive home. It was like, what on earth would you do that for? And there were a few other examples like that as well. But it was really fascinating, their reaction to things that we just took as automatic in our day. So as a result of these kinds of discussions, we realized we needed to help the women get organized. We needed to get all their pictures up to be recognized. We needed to work out schedules for when people could be doing different things. We realized that math skills were really lacking, so we needed to train people in basic math. And another very important area was savings and money. Most women in these cultures don't really have a good concept of saving money. They get money, and guess what? They spend it. Because if they don't spend it, probably their husband or their kids or somebody is going, or their sister or whatever, is going to want that money. So the idea of actually saving was somewhat of an alien concept. But we decided to convince them that saving is important and why saving is important. But another very interesting discussion, one woman said, well, if I have my box of money and another woman has some money, but somebody else wants some money, can I loan them some money? So we said, sure, you can loan them some money, and perhaps you might want to think about interest. And they just looked at us. Interest? Why would we give our friend money and ask them to pay us back more? I mean, that, again, was a concept that, just did not resonate within this culture. So these are the kinds of challenges that you start facing, because you can't assume that the way we do things is the way they do things. You have to really work out how they live what is important to them. Now they are demanding interest and they think it's a great idea, as do their husbands. But it took a long while to instill those types of concepts. So after quite a lot of additional training, we then decided that the women were ready for the larger revolving fund project. And in order to get the money to do that, they needed to put together a business plan. They needed to look at the competition, all the things that we would do in a business planning process. And ISA2 as a leader on the ground, plus myself, we had to approve what it was that they came up with. So again, lots of discussions, and one of the things that women in this part of the world do, Betsy's alluded to this, is they spend a lot of time, washing, a lot of time pounding rice in order to get the food that they need. And the women really wanted to not have to pound the rice. Their hands get sore, they spend a lot of time on it, it's hard work. So in one village, we got a rice milling machine. This saves them a lot of time. They could get the rice from all the surrounding villages to come in and to be milled. We did all the cost analysis, how to maintain the machines, how much petrol, gasoline was needed in order to run the machines. So all of the cost analysis was done. And this actually is a real money maker for this particular village. And then they can take that money, collectively determine where it goes, which is what I'm going to talk about in a minute, so that they can increase their income generation. Another village wanted a coos milling machine, very similar to a rice milling machine, but grinding up coos. Another village wanted a bakery. So we put in a bakery so that they could bake what they call the bread over there tapalapa, and they could bake fresh bread, and again, they could distribute it to the surrounding villages. And then another village really wanted to manufacture soap. So they manufactured the soap for personal use and omo for washing clothes. And they have a lot of shea butter in the Gambia. So they also wanted to manufacture beauty products. And again, these are businesses that are generating a considerable amount of money in Gambian terms for the women. So the next step was, and this is really where Betsy's book comes into play, is now that this money was coming in on a regular basis, how can we use that money and generate more income? So again, more training, lots of training. I'm trying to emphasize the need for training and the need for listening. One village started beekeeping. Beekeeping is again very easy for them to do. They can make money. They also decided that they really needed to improve their sewing and their tailoring skills. And they love to dye fabrics, batik fabrics, tie-dye fabrics. I have some examples here. This is some of the batik fabric. Again, we can kind of pass some of these things around, but they really make the most beautiful fabrics. And people in country love these fabrics. So when it came to tailoring, we didn't want to make bags that could be exported, because once you start exporting things, customs duties, it gets very complicated. So what they did with the improved skills is they decided there was a market at the Gambia Technical Institute for a computer bag. So what they went for was, okay, let's try to market these to that niche, because that's a niche that other people aren't working with. Use our natural tie-dye, batik type work, use our improved skills, and let's use that as our market. So again, they were really thinking through what was going to work for them. And then the other thing is, just like we all take our little bags to Trader Joe's, they decided to take the rice bags that they have, recycle them, and produce bags that, again, people could use over and over again. And in fact, ISA2, the lady who I work with in the Gambia, the reason she's in America is because she's promoting her book, One Plastic Bag. What she did in her village was she cleaned up all the plastic bags, she washed them, and then she made out of those, she taught all the women how to crochet them into these kinds of bags. And she also got old videotape and crocheted them. So that's what the sparkly one is the videotape. And so this is a woman who took a very practical problem of plastic bags and came up with an amazing solution. And now this book is also helping for her to gain visibility to help empower other women. So it's not just about the products, it's also about thinking creatively about how we can help people to be able to pursue their dreams and create opportunities. So rice sacks was a big one, recycled bags were a big one, methane generation so that we can get again away from wood stoves and use methane. Gardening, the women love to garden. We're using solar panels to pull up the water, pumping. We've got drip irrigation systems going, producing wonderful crops of, in this case, eggplant, lots of different crops. And goats. Everybody needs goats in the Gambia. It's a bit like a currency. So one village that we were working with, they took their money after a couple of months. They bought half the women in the village a goat. Next year, when the goat has a kid, the other half of the women will get a goat. So they're very proud of their goat project. And then this is cell phone charging. And again, fascinating working in Africa. You see, we put solar panels in the hospital. So guess where everybody comes to charge their cell phones? They come to the hospital. So we were trying to put in another project, one of the ones that's in the book, where there would be a solar panel and set up a charging station. That works great in the villages where we're not already put solar panels, like in the hospital. But there's no way these people are going to pay us anything if they can go to the hospital and get it all for free. So, you live and learn as you go on. And we're trying to convince them that, really they should pay. But, they're shrewd. I mean, they don't have a lot of money. And who are we to say, no, don't go and get your phones charged at the hospital? But it is like this spaghetti jungle, every day. There's hundreds of phones using the panels we put in at the hospital for cell phone charging. Some of the other money has gone to microfinance loans. One woman really wants to sell shoes, like flip-flop shoes, and she has set up a small business. So, I mean, one or two women are taking money and then individually growing their own business. And also a number of women are taking out loans from the money that's being generated for paying for their children's school fees. We're also doing a lot more with solar cooking. And another fascinating story, I spent an entire day with a group of women. Do we make 4 big cakes or do we make 35 cupcakes? And they went through the whole risk analysis and said, no, we're not making big cakes. We're only making little cakes. Because if we don't sell the 4 big cakes, then guess what? We're losing a lot of money. And it's fascinating going through those kinds of discussions with them and helping them to think what will work for them. So now we've got a whole solar cupcake process that is going. So just to sum up, and again, many of these ideas that I've just come up with at the end here are in the book. But by working with the women, helping them out, they are now able to get their kids to school, they've got nutrition, they understand about savings, they're empowered. They actually have a place in the village development committees with the men. And it's just transformed their lives in a way that just gives me great pleasure and makes me realize that this is something that I want to continue to work on. So let's open it up for some questions. Betsy, come back up. And then we've got one more slide we want to show you at the end. But any questions from the audience? Yes.
If we went into, the art is great, how do we help? If we went into do something,
How do we help?
Okay.
Great question. We planted her.
Yeah. I think that there's lots of ways to help. I mean, one is if you take a look at the book, you may find something you're really passionate about. If it's a medical thing or a solar thing, you can direct energy towards that, or you can donate money towards that. Betsy has put on your table actually something that Solar Sisters is doing. They're sending a whole lot of women up to Kilimanjaro. If anybody wants to go climb Kilimanjaro with a group, there's something like that.
Has anybody climbed Kilimanjaro?
I have. And then, there's what we're trying to do, and we're just starting because we've only come together fairly recently, is we want to try to actually have some conferences in Africa and in probably Latin America and start disseminating this information to really help people. So I mean, you can help us to work in that capacity.
I want to point out that there are these icons on the page. You can see a guide to them on the right side. And the bottom one is you. That was my daughter named it. And you'll see at the bottom of a lot of different entries, the U is suggestions of something that a person interested in helping can do. Anybody can donate to any of these projects if they're a nonprofit. Some of them are businesses, so they're not looking for donations, but they might be selling something like the Luminades, where you buy a couple and then they donate a few. So I've included things like that in the bottom as well. And if there's an organization that really catches your fancy and they don't have a project for you, you can work backwards. You can get in touch with them directly and say, how can I help? That's the best email in the world for someone to get.
Yes. Yeah.
And also in the back, if those of you are travelers, there's a, I'm not going to find it, but you will. There's a subset in the back, excuse me, of things that you could do when you're traveling. As simple as getting in touch with Global Grins. They will give you 100 toothbrushes. There's a dearth of toothbrushes in the developing world, and there's a lot of junk food. So an epidemic of dental cavities in children. And they don't tell you where to take the toothbrushes. They give you suggestions. So it's part of your travel experience to figure out how to find a school or a neighborhood or a church or something. And you get off the beaten path. You get out of the tourist part of your trip to where the lower income people in that country live. So a lot of different.
And we can, if people want to come up individually afterwards, we can make some suggestions if there's an area that you're particularly interested in. There's a lot of organizations here in the US that are also helping that people can get involved with.
Somebody here had a, yes.
I was just going to make a comment because 3 weeks ago I was in India. And,
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and it was really incredible. You did see a lot of apartment buildings and condos and things of that nature, but you also did see makeshift homes, people who were just building from whatever they could find on the streets. And when you first said solar, I was thinking, I don't think those places could support solar panels, but something like this would be tremendous. I didn't even go out at night, so I have no idea what they did for lighting or if they had
Kerosene. And those, it's very dangerous because it's a fire.
Yeah.
And imagine in all those little
And
claptrap.
it's unbelievable to see how people are able to live off of so little. I mean, they have the dirt. That's their floor,
Yeah.
you know. And it's a lot of people.
Well, also people in those circumstances are incredibly resourceful.
Yeah.
And they are the true geniuses about how to manage money because they have to live on such small amounts.
And about poverty, like the one business that I went into, there were no women laborers, you know. The hotel, men cleaned your room.
Yes.
You know, men had all those jobs.
So
that-
probably the women are back in the village.
Yes.
And you did see there were female engineers, you know, not as many, but management, all men, you know. So
Yeah, well, women are making strides, but it's a long way to go. And one of my goals with all these photographs is role models for young women. And World Reader, which distributes the literature I mentioned, they want to upload the book so that it will be available. And that was very exciting to me, that young women in some of these countries could be looking at a book where they see engineers and women doing all these different kinds of things. So that's the job of this generation.
Other questions? Yes.
What are you doing for the project, like, from America when you're not over there? Like, what kind of, like, organization are you doing? Are you just planning to take it to other countries?
Well, in the Gambia Women's Initiative, I set a goal with ISA2. I said in 5 years, we want to have 5 villages to a point that we have these revolving fund projects in, and then you're kind of on your own. Because I really believe that you have to help people to help themselves. And by the way, we didn't just give people anything. They also had to contribute because they need to see the value in order to get involved. So actually 2014, we did what I said. And that's partly why ISIT was able to free up a bit of time and come over. Her goal is to take the pilot to 40 villages in the Gambia. And she has a United Nations grant and an EU grant to do that. My goal is to take the model to other parts of Africa and other places. So I really believe in finite projects because you don't want to just keep on going and going and going. You want to give people the opportunity, you empower them, and then they empower themselves. Yeah. So right now I'm actually, I don't have any major thing. I'm now in an exploratory mode to try to get funding to really take the model and help them. And obviously the things in Betsy's book would be great. Yeah.
I'll take a second to tell you about this Kilimanjaro bulletin, and then we'll stay around if people have time. My goal was impact, and when you write a book, you're writing, in relative seclusion for a long time. And the book, one of the early reviewers that got an advance copy is a blogger called Third Eye Mom, and she travels the world as an ambassador for women and children and for NGOs that focus on health of maternal women and children. She's always wanted to climb Kilimanjaro. She learned about Solar Sister in the book, and the second she heard about this climb, she signed on for it. So her name is Nicole, and this is her fundraising page. The deal is you have to raise $4,000, which will underwrite 8 new Solar Sisters, and then it's an ever-expanding chain because when that entrepreneur pays back her $500 loan, it's revolving. They then bring in a new woman. They now have, I have the statistics. They have, they have about 1,100 solar sister entrepreneurs, and they've impacted about 120,000 people because when you sell it to a household, the whole household benefits. And they want to raise $500,000, which will bring in 1,000 new Solar Sisters. So anybody that wants to support Nicole, that would be really fun. Tell her that you were at the Exelon event. I told her I was going to pitch her today. And, or maybe somebody here just wants to go do this climb, and we'll all support you. So it's what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this session. We really appreciate you being here. And as Donna said, it's all about innovation. So go away and innovate.
Yeah, anybody that wants to.
Betsy said she'd be happy to sign your book if you would like her signature on the book. And Carol, in appreciation for you all coming today, we're going to make a contribution from Excellent Generation to Power Up Gambia and Solar Sisters. So
okay, thank you very much,
Thank
Vicki.
you.
Really
Here's one of the
appreciate it.
checks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Got my pen. Hi. Thank you. Well, it was so fun.
Did the men
Carol
in the
really
village
does it, so it's, and I've
accept
met
this,
so many.
or how did you educate them on the benefits of allowing their wives to take the time to come and work?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
It's a very good.
The women,
You got a postcard.
when we started out with the solar food drive, the men, what is
Pleasure.
this? What earth are you doing? And the women were very.
Great. Oh, you looked me up?
They were very. They would talk to the men, and the men would sort of poo-poo it. This is never going to
I've
work.
learned about reviews
But
that I
once you start to get to the stage of the revolving fund projects, the men realize that this
For
is not
Cynthia,
just
that was
helping
always our
women,
joke
it's helping the
interviewer.
entire
For
village. They
Cynthia.
realize the value, and actually the men have been extremely supportive. And in some of the pictures, I don't have them all here, but in the training programs, we included the men. I mean, we included whoever
Great, be in
wanted. I mean,
touch.
it's the
I
women's
love-
initiative.
Oh, I want it.
That
if
was
people
the
do things
catalyst.
from the book,
But
let me
we
know,
have a
is
lot
your
of
story.
we have a lot of men.
Okay.
And,
blog
and
about
actually,
you.
it's been very, very positive. And what has been great is
Okay,
that
this is
the men have accepted the women. The men are accepting the women in these village development committees that are
of a cool
the
perk
decision
of
making
working at
to take on
Exelon.
these other roles.
said
to
with thanks.
think
I said
about
with
things.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Monica, I think. How did I know that? Just
I mean, the women are actually, some of the women are earning more
Channeled
money
your
than their
name.
husbands. But
It's for you.
it's
For my
fine.
favorite.
I mean,
Hold up the book
and
so
that's one of the things about the Gambia. The
As you-
Gambia is
like that,
actually
as
a
you go to
very,
give it to her. Thank you.
it's 3 tribes. It's Wolof, Mandinka, and Jola, and it's different religions, and there's just a sort of a, you know, there's when people work together and act together and support each other. In some, I don't think like in some, I'm not doing other
Well,
cultures,
that's
but
because
like
of the women's
when
violence.
I've done some work in Nigeria,
That is
I don't
India.
get that same sense. When I've worked in India, I don't get that same sense. There's a much greater differentiation there between men and women. In the Gambia,
So
it's
think
all
that we
about
got to come back and
let's collaborate, let's work together.
So, did you two introduce each other yourselves?
Well, I didn't really. I work in PICO environment, so I'm on the environmental side.
So I think it's nice. Maybe you two can exchange phone numbers and maybe have Carol, Betsy come to Pico and meet.
Yes, yes. Our initiative this year for women in the PICO side of it is all on health and fitness.
Okay.
I want to talk to your organization on campus.
Area.
I would love to.
And so we might, you know, if I could propose it for next year to have something more focused on global women initiatives.
You've got my it's on the back of those cards.
Some of it fits in.
Thank you. Great. Hi.
We ought to share the video that we just showed.
Want people to get out there and do stuff. So
The coconut.
what better way than talking to people that
Yeah. Yeah. Let me give you a minute.
There's
Yeah.
a lot I can brought in to
Yeah.
at least go right along with what.
Yeah, I mean, I could even help you not just have us come in, but I could also suggest other people so that we could put together a program,
Series of seminars that
programs.
could go across the state.
Yes, yes.
Vicky would have great.
I will. I don't have a card
Why?
with me today.
That's
I'm
fine,
sorry,
well, I'll send
but
you an
I will.
email.
I will send you an email
I
because
was
I
of
have
the
your contact
generation where all
information
the
and
guys
see.
were girls
Get
and
that.
like
Because this was very engaging. Thank you. I was super
Thank you very
excited.
much.
Oh, I was delighted that I was able to make it. Yeah, you never know where our travels are going to take us. The area.
And you had a great question. Yeah. Have you traveled to other places?
There were 2 developing countries. I did a mission trip way back in high school in Jamaica.
It has to be a better way. She needs to see the book, eh? Yeah. That's great. Well, this was really fun.
Thank you again. I really appreciate you coming out.
It's fun. Totally fun.
Here that'll take action. We brought in men for like we brought them in last year, and we had some women that ended up supporting them.
Yeah, it's like